Amid the rugged mountains of Oaxaca, where green valleys lie cradled between rocky ridges, there once flourished a brilliant civilization that lasted for more than 2 millennia. This was the Zapotec Civilization, a native people who built great cities atop mountains, inscribed their name into Mesoamerican history with ancient writing, stepped pyramids, and mysterious religious rituals. The Zapotec were known as the Cloud People, Baena Za'a in their native language, because they lived high in the mountains, closer to the sky than to the earth. Their center of power was Monte Albán, a massive city on a mountaintop with vast plazas, ball courts, tombs, and carved stone inscriptions. By the 5th century BCE, Monte Albán had become one of the largest urban centers in the Americas, with tens of thousands of inhabitants. For over 2,000 years, the Zapotec developed a complex society with nobles, warriors, craftsmen, and farmers. They created their own writing system, one of the earliest in the New World, practiced a polytheistic religion tied to the cycles of rain, maize, and life, and engaged in trade and warfare with neighboring civilizations such as the Mixtec, Teotihuacan, and Maya. Eventually, they weakened under the shadow of the Aztec Empire, before collapsing entirely with the arrival of the Spanish in 1521. Yet, even after losing their power, the Zapotec did not disappear. They still remain in the architecture of Monte Albán and Mitla, in the indigenous languages still spoken across Oaxaca, and in humanity's memory of a people who lived among the clouds and left an immortal legacy. Part 1. Origins. In the mountains of Oaxaca, in what is today southern Mexico, where the 3 ranges of the Sierra Madre converge to form a rugged yet fertile valley, one of the oldest and most enduring civilizations of the New World arose. This was Oaxaca, where the Zapotec, the Cloud People, laid their first foundations over 2,700 years ago. This land, with its diverse climate, forbidding mountains and fertile valleys, became the cradle of a brilliant society from which the Zapotec entered the stage of Mesoamerican history. The origins of the Zapotec began with small agricultural communities. As early as 1500 to 1200 BCE, the inhabitants of the Oaxaca Valley cultivated maize, beans, and squash, the legendary triad of Mesoamerica. They lived in small villages, made simple pottery, raised turkeys and dogs, and gradually tied their lives to the land and seasons. Over generations, these communities interconnected, exchanged goods, shared beliefs, and forged a common identity. Within this flow, the Zapotec emerged as a people with their own language, customs, and mythology. A great turning point came around 700 BCE, when the Zapotec made a bold decision: to build a city on top of a mountain. Instead of settling in the valleys, where the soil was more fertile, they chose a high, flat mountain top from which they could oversee all 3 main valleys of Oaxaca. This place became Monte Albán, one of the earliest and greatest cities of ancient America. Monte Albán did not appear overnight. At first, it was only a small defensive village, but over time, it expanded into a vast city with a central plaza, stepped pyramids, monuments, and residential areas. From this strategic position, the Zapotec controlled the valleys, collected agricultural tribute, supervised trade, and made Monte Albán the heart of Zapotec power for nearly 1,000 years. From its very beginnings, the Zapotec demonstrated a highly organized society. They built not only houses, but also public works. Stone slabs known as danzantes were carved with figures in contorted poses, possibly prisoners destined for sacrifice or important individuals. These are considered among the earliest examples of stone carving and writing in the Americas. The glyphs on the slabs were part of the Zapotec hieroglyphic system, one of the oldest writing systems in the Western Hemisphere. This shows that from the start, the Zapotec felt the need to record their history and assert their identity through language. Agriculture remained the foundation. The Zapotec cultivated the Oaxaca Valley with terraced fields along the mountainsides and irrigation canals, channeling water from streams. Maize was sacred, associated with the god Pitao Kozobi. Good harvests were seen as blessings from the gods, while crop failure meant divine wrath. From the beginning, religion and agriculture were intertwined, turning planting into ritual and maize into a symbol of life itself. The origins of the Zapotec were also tied to military expansion. To sustain Monte Albán, they had to conquer and control surrounding villages. The danzantes may be evidence of these first wars, prisoners captured and sacrificed to assert power. Thus, warfare was not only about defense, but also a sacred act binding people to the gods. By around 500 BCE, Monte Albán grew into the political and religious capital of the entire valley. A stratified society emerged: nobles, priests, and warriors on top, farmers and craftsmen below. Though unequal, this structure brought stability and strength. Priests, both religious leaders and astronomers, recorded the movements of the sun and moon to predict the seasons. This synchronization of agriculture with ritual kept society unified under a shared faith. As twilight fell on Monte Albán, casting light on the Zapotec's first stepped pyramids, one could see a society crossing the threshold from small villages into full civilization. From that mountain, the Zapotec looked down upon the three valleys, fields of maize stretching wide, villages smoking with evening fires, warriors returning home, priests preparing rituals, and from there a civilization was born, a civilization of mountains, of clouds, and of human will striving to rise above the valleys and touch eternity. Part 2. The Golden Age, Monte Albán and the Expansion of the Zapotec. When the dawn of the 5th century BCE spread across the mountains of Oaxaca, Monte Albán was no longer just a fortified mountaintop village, but had become a true city, the political, religious, and commercial heart of the valley. This was the era when the Zapotec rose to prominence, building one of the longest-lasting civilizations in the Americas, enduring for nearly 2 millennia. Monte Albán was the very symbol of this golden age, a great city rising from the mountaintops, where sky meets earth, where gods and humans coexisted. Monte Albán was laid out with grand urban planning. At its center stood the Plaza Mayor, a vast rectangular plaza surrounded by stepped pyramids, temples, ball courts, and administrative buildings. From this plaza, authority radiated throughout the valley. It was both the stage for religious rituals and the embodiment of political power. On the walls of Monte Albán, the Zapotec carved their hieroglyphic script, one of the oldest writing systems in the New World, emerging almost simultaneously with that of the Maya. Zapotec writing appears on stone stelae, especially victory monuments recording the names and images of conquered rulers. These glyphs were not merely records, but declarations of power. The Zapotec have triumphed, the gods stand with us. Writing affirmed that the Zapotec were not just an agricultural society, but a true civilization capable of preserving memory through language. During this golden age, Monte Albán's population grew to tens of thousands, perhaps 25,000 to 30,000, a staggering figure for Mesoamerica at the time. The city connected hundreds of villages throughout the Oaxaca Valley, all governed by Zapotec nobles and priests. From Monte Albán, they collected tribute in crops, gold, jade, and controlled mountain trade routes. Zapotec society was sharply stratified. Nobles and priests lived atop Monte Albán, among temples and stone tombs, Warriors protected the city and waged campaigns against surrounding villages. Craftsmen were renowned for red pottery, clay figurines, and gold and silver jewelry. Farmers formed the majority, cultivating maize, beans, squash, cotton, and cacao. Each class played its role, together powering the great engine of Zapotec civilization. One of the Zapotecs' special achievements of this era was their funerary art and tombs. Archaeologists at Monte Albán have uncovered chambered tombs filled with human effigies, pottery, and gold ornaments, evidence of advanced belief systems and artistry. Stone urns sculpted with expressive faces, large eyes, prominent noses, open mouths, were placed in tombs, symbolizing the bond between the dead and the gods. The Golden Age also saw the flourishing of the Mesoamerican ball game. Played with rubber balls on eye-shaped courts, the game was more than sport. It was ritual, sometimes ending in sacrifice. It represented cosmic dualities, life and death, night and day, moon and sun. On the ball courts of Monte Albán, the Zapotec reenacted the universe through play. The Zapotec were not isolated. They traded and sometimes clashed with neighboring civilizations. Archaeological evidence shows ties between Monte Albán and Teotihuacan, the great city of central Mexico. Some scholars believe the Zapotec even had their own district within Teotihuacan, a testament to cultural influence. They also exchanged goods with the Maya, Mixtec, and others, jade, cacao, exotic feathers, and pottery, but peace was never constant. The danzantes carvings depicting captive figures suggest that the Zapotec frequently waged war, capturing prisoners and offering them to the gods. Warfare was both political power and religious duty. Blood was shed so the gods would grant rain and harvests. In Zapotec society, war and religion were inseparable. Monte Albán continued to expand throughout the first millennium CE, reaching its height around 700 CE. It became a religious political capital dominating the entire Oaxaca Valley. Yet with wealth and power came growing competition from neighboring powers. At its brightest moment, Monte Albán gleamed like a jewel rising from the mountains, radiant, proud, reaching for the sky. Its great plaza, carved stelae, stepped pyramids, ritual ball courts, and golden tombs all testified that the Zapotec had transformed the rugged land of Oaxaca into a shining center of civilization. They lived among the clouds, but their legacy was carved in stone, an immortal mark in the history of Mesoamerica. Part 3. Zapotec Culture, Religion, and Daily Life. If Monte Albán was the political heart of the Zapotec, then culture, religion, and daily life were the soul that kept it beating for more than 2 millennia. A civilization can only endure when it nurtures belief, art, and identity. For the Zapotec, that meant faith in gods tied to rain, maize, and life itself. Rituals steeped in blood, sweat, and the rhythm of drums, and the everyday lives of farmers and craftsmen intertwined with the breath of Oaxaca's mountains. Zapotec religion was polytheistic, deeply connected to nature and agriculture. Among their gods, Cochillo, the deity of rain and lightning, reigned supreme. Each rainy season, when black clouds gathered over Oaxaca's peaks, the Zapotec raised their eyes to the sky, praying for Cochillo to release life-giving rain for maize and beans. Cochillo was often depicted with human features mixed with serpent and jaguar elements, bulging eyes, and a mouth spewing lightning, both terrifying and divine. Alongside him was Pitao Kozobi, the maize god, symbol of life and sustenance. Zapotec, a god linked to rebirth through sacrifice, and many lesser deities ruling mountains, rivers, the sun, and the moon. Rituals often involved sacrifice. The Danzantes stones at Monte Albán depict mutilated, contorted figures, possibly war captives or perhaps voluntary victims offered to the gods. Blood spilled on pyramid steps was not mere brutality, but a way to commune with the divine, to nourish rain, maize, and life. For the Zapotec, the sacrifice of a few was the price for the survival of the many. Belief also intertwined with astronomy and calendrics. Zapotec priests observed the sun, moon, and stars to create a 260-day ritual calendar and a 365-day solar calendar, systems similar to the Maya. Monte Albán structures, like the observatory, Building J, were aligned precisely to record celestial events. For them, the cosmos was an endless cycle, and humans were but one link in that greater chain. Daily life, though shaped by religion, was vibrant and diverse. Farmers were the majority, cultivating terraced fields of maize, beans, squash, cotton, and cacao. Maize was not just food, but sacred. The kernel symbolized the human soul. Meals revolved around tortillas, atole, maize gruel, and cacao, the drink of the elite. Zapotec artisans were famed across Mesoamerica. They crafted red and black pottery, clay figurines, and especially the Zapotec urns, ceramic effigies of humans or gods placed in tombs, blending art with faith. They were also skilled goldsmiths and jewelers, producing masks, bracelets, and earrings in gold, silver, and jade. These were not merely ornaments, but status symbols and ritual objects. Warriors formed a distinct class. While farmers worked the terraces, warriors marched to expand territory and capture prisoners for ritual sacrifice. Zapotec warriors were often portrayed in feathered attire, with round shields and spears. Yet in rituals, even warriors themselves could become sacrifices, offering their lives to Cochijo or Xipe Totec. Music and performance were central to Zapotec festivals. Drums, flutes, and conch shell trumpets accompanied dances and chants. Performance was not just entertainment, but a reenactment of mythology, the cosmic struggle of sun against darkness or the maize cycle from seed to harvest. Artists and priests, music and religion were inseparable. Family and community played vital roles. Villages had central plazas for festivals, rituals, and council decisions led by elders and priests. Marriages were conducted with traditional rites, witnessed by both the community and the gods. Children were taught from an early age about maize, rituals, and their roles in society. Language was another cornerstone. The Zapotec spoke their own tongue, distinct from their neighbors. Remarkably, millions of Zapotec descendants in Oaxaca still speak it today, making it one of Mexico's most resilient indigenous languages, living proof of the Zapotec legacy's endurance. Looking into Zapotec life, one sees more than pyramids and golden tombs. One sees farmers on terraced fields, potters shaping red clay, warriors training, priests tracking stars, children playing near ball courts, elders telling myths by firelight. It was a colorful society where gods and humans shared the same space, and every action was tied to the cosmos and the cycles of crops. The Zapotec turned life into ritual, farming into religion, and art into messages for the gods. This is what allowed them to endure for over 2,000 years, leaving an indelible mark on the history of Mesoamerica. Part 4. The Decline. Under the shadow of the Aztecs and the Spanish, no civilization escapes the law of time. After nearly 2 millennia of existence, from the grandeur of Monte Albán to the brilliant cities scattered across the Oaxaca valleys, the Zapotec eventually bowed to the might of rising powers. First, the Mixtec and the Aztec, and later, the relentless wave of the Spanish. Monte Albán, the pride of the Zapotec, began to weaken around the 8th–9th centuries CE. The city gradually lost its role as the political center, with many inhabitants abandoning it, leaving behind empty plazas and moss-covered temples. Power shifted to new centers like Mitla, a religious city renowned for its stone mosaics with intricate geometric designs. Mitla became the sacred heart of late Zapotec religion, but it also symbolized a reality. Zapotec power was fragmented and no longer centralized like in Monte Albán's heyday. Meanwhile, the Mixtec, neighbors in the mountains of Oaxaca, emerged as formidable rivals. The Mixtec not only developed their own writing and artistic traditions, but also excelled in warfare and alliances. They repeatedly invaded Zapotec lands, seized fertile valleys, and even intermarried with Zapotec nobility to consolidate power. The centuries-long Zapotec-Mixtec rivalry drained strength from both sides, leaving the Zapotec weakened and unable to maintain their former dominance. By the 15th century, a greater shadow loomed over Oaxaca, the Aztec Empire. From the Valley of Mexico, the Aztec expanded across Mesoamerica, building a powerful empire based on war, tribute, and human sacrifice. Aztec armies marched into Oaxaca, conquering many Zapotec regions, forcing them to pay tribute in cacao, textiles, gold, and captives for sacrifice at Tenochtitlan. Although not fully conquered, the Zapotec became vassals of the Aztec at various times, losing much of their independence and power. Still, the Zapotec never fully surrendered. They knew when to ally, sometimes cooperating with the Aztec against the Mixtec, or vice versa. Zapotec society retained its identity, preserving language, religion, and art. Mitla continued to shine as a religious center where priests conducted ceremonies and pilgrims gathered. Yet by the 15th century, the Zapotec were no longer rulers of Oaxaca, but rather one piece in Mesoamerica's shifting political mosaic. Then, in 1519, a storm blew in from the east, the Spanish conquistadors. Hernán Cortés and his men landed on Mexico's shores with firearms, horses, and boundless ambition. In just 2 years, they toppled the mighty Aztec Empire. With the Aztecs' fall, all of Mesoamerica shook, including the Zapotec. At first, the Zapotec sought negotiation. Some leaders submitted peacefully, paying tribute in gold, cacao, and crops to avoid Aztec-like destruction. But not all accepted. Many Zapotec communities resisted, retreating into Oaxaca's mountains to wage guerrilla war. Yet muskets and cavalry proved devastating against warriors armed only with spears and shields. The greatest devastation came not from steel, but from disease. Smallpox, measles, and influenza, unknown to the natives, swept through Oaxaca. Tens of thousands of Zapotec perished within decades, unraveling their society. Cities emptied, farmlands were abandoned, and rituals ceased. Epidemics inflicted the mortal wound, erasing much of the Zapotec population and strength. By 1521, when the Aztec Empire officially fell to Cortés, the Zapotec had lost nearly all independence. They were forced to convert to Christianity, their temples destroyed or converted into churches. Mitla, their sacred city, was seized. Its mosaics survived, but Zapotec gods could no longer be worshipped openly. Native nobility was replaced by Spanish encomenderos, while peasants were bound into colonial labor systems. The Zapotec decline was not as dramatic as Songhai's fall at Tondibi, nor as tragic as Carthage's fiery destruction. It was a quieter dissolution. They did not collapse in a single battle, but were slowly consumed by conquest and plague. Oaxaca's mountains remained. Mitla still stood, but Zapotec power was reduced to memory. Yet, uniquely, the Zapotec never vanished. Unlike many civilizations erased completely, they endured under colonial rule, but still preserving their language, traditions, and memory. And that thread of survival leads us to their lasting legacy, which continues into the present day. Part 5. Legacy. The Zapotec today. Though Monte Albán has fallen silent, though Mitla is reduced to its carved stone walls, and though the Zapotec bowed first to the Aztec and then to the Spanish, the Zapotec people never disappeared. Unlike many ancient civilizations completely swallowed by time, the Zapotec live on, not as an empire, but as a people who have preserved their language, beliefs, customs, and cultural identity for thousands of years. Today, in the state of Oaxaca, Mexico, more than 400,000 Zapotec still speak their ancestral tongue. It is not a single language, but rather an entire Zapotec language family with dozens of dialects, reflecting the diversity and vitality of the community. In a world where many indigenous languages vanish each day, the Zapotec's preservation of their voice is proof of cultural resilience. The material legacy of the Zapotec endures most clearly in Monte Albán and Mitla, their two greatest archaeological sites, both now UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Monte Albán, with its vast plaza, stepped pyramids, danzantes carvings, and the astronomical observatory of Building J, still astonishes visitors with its planning and vision. Mitla, with its intricate geometric mosaics of cut stone, represents the pinnacle of Zapotec architecture, so unique that the Spanish, when building the San Pablo Church, reused Mitla's foundations. The spiritual legacy of the Zapotec remains alive in art and folk religion. Although Christianity replaced the old polytheistic system, in many Oaxacan villages one can still see syncretism, Catholic festivals held alongside indigenous rituals with dances, music, masks, drums, and flutes. Zapotecs still tell stories of Cochillo, the rain god, and Pitao Cozobi, the maize god, as part of their collective memory. These beliefs have not vanished, but rather blended, living quietly in daily life. Zapotec craftsmanship, especially in pottery and weaving, is still famous across Mexico. The vibrant, geometric textiles of Oaxaca are a continuation of the stone-carved patterns of Mitla. Red and black pottery, small clay figurines sold in local markets, are not mere souvenirs, but living links between past and present. Equally important is their historical identity. The Zapotec still call themselves Beena Za'a, the people of the clouds. They retell legends of ancestors from the high mountains, of Monte Albán as the city of the gods. Despite centuries of domination, from Aztec to Spanish, they remain proud heirs to a civilization that once stood alongside the Maya and Teotihuacan. For humanity, the Zapotec are proof that Mesoamerica was not only Maya and Aztec. Long before those empires rose, the Zapotec had invented writing, built Monte Albán, studied the stars, and left behind tombs and stone inscriptions. They were among the first indigenous peoples to create urban society, centralized states, and enduring archaeological evidence. Without the Zapotec, the story of Mesoamerica would be incomplete. Perhaps the greatest legacy of the Zapotec is the survival of their identity. While Carthage was erased, Tiwanaku crumbled, and the Indus Valley remains a mystery, the Zapotec endure, in flesh and blood, in language, in dance, in the villages of Oaxaca today. They are not just a lost civilization, but a living people still writing their ancestral story. When one stands in Monte Albán's plaza, gazing at the high skies where clouds drift across the mountaintops, one almost hears the echoes of the people of the clouds, the beating of festival drums, the chants of priests calling for rain, the laughter of children playing on the stone steps. The Zapotec never truly vanished. They transformed to survive. And in that survival, their legacy has become eternal. High in the mountains of Oaxaca, The Zapotec, the people of the clouds, built a civilization that lasted over 2,000 years. They raised Monte Albán, carved glyphs into stone, crafted pottery, and tombs of remarkable beauty, studied the heavens to build calendars, and worshipped the gods of rain and maize as the essence of life. They were among the earliest Mesoamerican societies to form states, build cities, and leave indelible archaeological evidence. But time and history weighed heavily upon them. Monte Albán grew silent, power shifted to Mitla, the Zapotec fought the Mixtec, bowed to the Aztec, and finally endured the conquest of Spain. War, disease, and forced religion eroded their strength. Yet, unlike many civilizations, the Zapotec were never erased. Today, their descendants live on, in the villages of Oaxaca, in the Zapotec language still spoken by hundreds of thousands, in the woven textiles, in the ritual dances, in the memory of Cochillo and Pitao Cozobi. Monte Albán and Mitla stand as World Heritage Sites where humanity can marvel at the talent and ambition of a people who once lived among the clouds. The Zapotec are not only a civilization of the past, but living proof that identity can survive across centuries of upheaval. And when we stand in Monte Albán's stone plaza, looking up to the high sky, we can almost hear the voices of millennia past. We lived, we created, and we are still here,